The stagecoach driver didn't even bother to help her down. He just tossed her carpetbag into the dust, snapped the reins, and left Miss Cordelia Ashford standing alone at the Timber Ridge crossroads, with the wind pulling at her skirts and the mountains staring her down. 29 years old, 345 pounds, a fat spinster from Philadelphia who had just spent her last dollar to become a practical bride to a practical man. At least, that was the plan when she stepped onto the train 2 weeks ago. Cora, no one called her Cordelia except strangers and school boards, stood there in her best dress, the seams biting into her arms, the corset digging into her ribs, clutching a folded letter that had changed her life. Samuel Thornton's handwriting was rough but honest. I'm 42, got 7 children, ages 13 to 3, lost my wife 2 years back. I don't need a fancy lady. I need a strong woman who won't faint at hard work or the sight of blood. You said in your notice you're a large woman, healthy, practical, not expecting romance. I respect that. I can't promise you poetry. I can promise you land, a roof, food, and a place at my table if you'll take it. For the first time in her life, a man had spoken to her without pretending her size didn't matter, and without sneering that it did. Now the stagecoach was gone. The crossroads was empty, save for 1 wagon and 1 man. He was lean, weather-worn, maybe 60, with a gray beard and eyes that had seen too many winters. He sat on the wagon seat like he'd been waiting a long time. "You Cordelia Ashford?" he called. Cora straightened, smoothing her skirt, feeling the heat rise in her cheeks. "Yes, sir. Are you Mr. Thornton?" The man's jaw tightened. "No, ma'am. Name's Edgar Morrison. I'm Samuel's neighbor." Something cold slipped into Cora's stomach. "Where is Mr. Thornton?" Edgar climbed down from the wagon, hat in his hands now, snow dusted on his shoulders, though the sky was clear. "I got hard news for you, Miss Ashford, and there ain't no good way to say it. Samuel's dead. Tree fell wrong while he was logging 3 weeks back. Killed him before anyone could fetch help. We buried him on his land beside his first wife." The world tilted. Cora gripped her carpetbag to keep from falling with it. "Dead? But he was expecting me. I wrote. Edgar nodded, eyes softening. "He knew you were coming. Had about 10 minutes after the accident where he was still clear in the head. Made me promise 2 things. First, to meet you here and tell you the truth. Second, to give you this." From his coat, Edgar pulled a sealed letter, the envelope smudged and creased, her name scrawled across the front in a shaky, desperate hand. Cora took it with numb fingers. Her intended husband was in the ground. Her money was gone. The westbound road stretched behind her. The mountain road to his homestead climbed ahead. She broke the seal. "Cora, if you're reading this, I'm dead." By the time she reached the line, "Your papa's dead, Cora. But you're still theirs." The ink had blurred beneath falling tears. Before we go on with the rest of Cora's story, tell me in the comments, where in the world are you listening from right now? Cora read the letter 3 times, her breath shaking, the mountain air stinging her wet cheeks. By the end, the world had narrowed to 7 children she had never met and 1 dead man's plea echoing from the grave. Edgar watched her quietly, leaning against the wagon wheel as though he'd seen this moment in his mind every day for 3 weeks. When she finally folded the letter, he spoke with surprising gentleness. "You don't owe nothing to nobody out here, Miss Ashford." Samuel knew he was asking a lot. "If you want to turn back, I'll take you straight to town. We can put you on the next stage east. No one would blame you." Cora looked at the mountains stretching upward, raw and vast, the kind of land that swallowed the unprepared whole. Then she looked at the dirt road, climbing toward the place where Samuel Thornton's 7 children waited, watching, hoping, trusting the promise their father had made with his last breath. 7 children, alone for weeks, maybe scared, maybe half-starved, maybe sitting by a window every morning, waiting for dust on the road that never rose. Cora pressed the letter against her chest. A husband dying didn't erase the children, and it sure didn't erase the promise he'd asked her to keep. "Take me to them," she said. Edgar blinked, then nodded slowly, something warm and relieved flickering behind his eyes. "Reckon Samuel chose right. Climb up, Miss Ashford." The wagon lurched forward, creaking as they climbed into the high timber country. The air chilled with every mile, the pine trees crowding close like sentinels guarding a secret. Cora held her carpetbag tightly, bracing herself as the wheels jostled over rocks. Edgar drove in silence for a long while before finally speaking. "Samuel talked about you a lot," he said. "Told me you wrote straight, no frills. Said you didn't pretend to be less or more than you are. He respected that. You'd have liked each other." Cora swallowed. "I suppose we'll never know." "Maybe not," Edgar said, "but I know this. Samuel didn't ask lightly. Man could tell the difference between a woman wanting romance and one wanting a life. You came for a family. That ain't changed just 'cause he's in the ground." 2 hours later, the road widened to reveal a homestead nestled against a slope of golden aspens. A 2-story log house, a barn, a corral, smoke curling from the chimney, though faint, too faint for a home with 7 children. And then she saw them. 7 figures clustered on the porch. 7 faces pale with hope and fear. 7 children staring at the wagon as if it carried the rest of their lives. The youngest, little Margaret, no more than 3, pointed and shrieked, "Mama! Mama came!" Cora's heart twisted sharply. The oldest girl, 13-year-old Martha, caught the toddler's arm, whispering something too soft to hear. Her eyes, though, stayed fixed on Cora with a guarded, devastating hope. The wagon stopped. Edgar called out, "Kids, this here's Miss Cordelia Ashford, your papa's bride." A tremor rippled through the group. Martha stepped forward first, shoulders stiff, chin lifted with the kind of dignity only a child forced to grow up too fast could muster. "Ma'am," she said, voice thin but determined, Are you staying? Papa said you were coming. He told us before he died that a strong lady was on her way to be our new mama. We've been watching that road for weeks, every day." Cora climbed down slowly, her knees weak, her heart pounding. "I came to be your father's wife," she said softly, "but he's gone now. I know that. What hasn't changed is this. Your father asked me to take care of you, and I want to, if you'll have me." Martha's composure cracked. She surged forward, burying her face in Cora's chest, sobbing a sound that was half grief, half relief. The other children followed. Daniel, the twins, Samuel Jr. and Sarah, little Rebecca, Joshua with wide, frightened eyes, and tiny Margaret clinging to Cora's skirt like it was the edge of the world. "Please don't leave us," Martha whispered. "Everyone keeps leaving. First Mama, then Papa. Please don't go too." Cora wrapped her arms around all of them, feeling 7 hearts beating against her, 7 small bodies trembling with the fear of abandonment. "I won't leave," Cora said, voice breaking. "I came here to be a mother, and if you'll let me, that's exactly what I'll be." Behind her, Edgar wiped a sleeve across his eyes. "All right, kids," he said roughly. "Give the lady some air. She's had a long journey." But the children didn't let go. Not yet. And Cora didn't ask them to. She had traveled 1,000 miles to marry a man, Instead, she had arrived to find a family waiting for her. Cora had prepared herself for hardship when she boarded the train in Philadelphia. Life with a widowed mountain man and 7 children was never going to be gentle. But she had imagined partnership. She had imagined Samuel's steady presence beside her, imagined his voice sharing the burden, imagined his boots by the door at night. Instead, she walked into a house held together by grief and the fragile will of exhausted children. The first morning, she found 13-year-old Martha up at dawn, frying cornmeal mush while tying her youngest sister's shoes with her free hand. The girl nearly jumped when Cora touched her shoulder. "Martha, sweetheart, let me do breakfast." Martha's eyes flashed panic. No, ma'am. Papa always said I had to keep everything running. If I don't cook, the little ones don't eat. If I don't get water, no one has any. I'm supposed to be Mama now." "No," Cora said softly but firmly. "You're a child, and children deserve to breathe." Martha stared at her, distrust and longing tangled together. Then slowly, she stepped aside. Cora took over the stove. The room filled gradually with the smell of frying bacon and fresh bread. Real food, warm food, the kind Samuel's death had taken from them. The children drifted in one by one, drawn by scent and surprise. Daniel, the solemn 11-year-old, watched her like a hawk, arms crossed. The twins, 9 years old, bickered over who got the bigger spoonful. Joshua scowled at his plate like it had wronged him personally. Little Margaret climbed into Cora's lap and refused to move. That first breakfast was a battlefield of quiet tests. Could she cook like Mama? Could she manage chaos? Could she make them feel safe? By lunch, Cora realized, she could not win them over with words, only with consistency, only with patience, only with showing up every day until they believed she was not another adult who would disappear. The house itself was another challenge entirely. Laundry piled in corners, tools left where Samuel last set them down, a broken window patched with canvas. Cora rolled up her sleeves and began to clean, to mend, to make order out of grief's slow collapse. By the end of the second week, she discovered the truth. She was exhausted, aching, overwhelmed, and completely determined. The children, however, did not surrender easily. One night, 5-year-old Joshua refused to eat the stew she'd made. He crossed his arms and glared. "You ain't my mama," he said. "You can't make me." The words struck hard, but Cora had weathered far worse judgment in Philadelphia. She knelt beside him, keeping her voice calm. "You're right, Joshua. I'm not your mama. Your mama loved you with all her heart. I can't replace her. But I'm here to take care of you because she and your papa can't anymore. That's a hard truth for both of us. Now, either you eat your supper or you go to bed hungry. You choose." Joshua kicked the table leg. "Joshua Thornton," Cora said quietly, "your mama and papa raised a boy better than that." His face crumpled. He burst into tears so raw that even the twins went silent. In a moment, he was in Cora's arms, crying against her dress. "Don't leave us," he sobbed. "Please don't leave." Cora held him till the shaking stopped. Then she fed him the stew, one small spoonful at a time, just as she'd done with frightened children in her classroom back east. The breakthrough with Joshua was followed by a wall with Daniel. The boy was sharp, observant, and utterly unwilling to trust. "Samuel said you were practical," Daniel said one afternoon as he split kindling with the seriousness of a grown man. "But what if you leave in the spring? What if this is temporary?" Cora leaned on the porch rail beside him. "Temporary is what you make it, Daniel. Your papa asked me to stay. I'm honoring that. And unless you or your siblings tell me to go, I intend to be right here every morning." Daniel grunted, unconvinced, but his shoulders eased. The twins tested her in different ways. Samuel Jr. was quick-tempered, Sarah quick-tongued. They argued constantly. One afternoon, after an especially dramatic fight over the last apple, Cora pulled them aside. "You two remind me of my own brothers," she said. "And you know what solved our fights?" "What?" Sarah asked, suspicious. "Chores," Cora said. "Together." The twins groaned, but they churned butter together that evening, elbowing each other and laughing in spite of themselves. It wasn't all conflict. Moments of sweetness bloomed in the hard soil. Rebecca shyly brought Cora a drawing she had made, a large woman holding hands with 7 children. The figure was labeled Mama Cora. Martha began to sit beside Cora in the evenings, helping mend clothes while quietly asking for guidance. How to sew a proper hem, how to scold without shouting, how to grieve without falling apart. Little Margaret toddled after Cora everywhere, calling her Mama without hesitation, without fear. And each night, when the children were asleep and the house finally quiet, Cora opened Samuel's last letter and read it once more. "Your papa's dead, but you're still theirs." She had come west expecting a husband. Instead, she found a family built from grief and hope and desperate need. A family she was choosing each day in every chore, every argument, every tender moment she carved from exhaustion. She did not know what the town would think. She did not know whether the law would approve. She did not know whether she was strong enough to keep all 7 children safe. But the children were beginning to lean on her, to trust her, to need her in ways that frightened and humbled her. And Cora knew one thing with absolute certainty. She would not fail them. By the 3rd week, Cora realized a strange transformation was taking place, not just in the children, but in the house itself. Grief had settled over the Thornton homestead like a cold fog after Samuel died. She could feel its weight pressed into the walls, lingering in the corners, clinging to the silence between footsteps. But now, something warmer was seeping in, bit by bit, breath by breath, a steadiness, a rhythm. Cora hadn't come to save anyone. She had come to marry a man. Yet here she was, stitching together a broken household with thread and patience and the quiet stubbornness that had carried her across a continent. The first place she tackled was the kitchen. The stove had been used so sparingly that soot coated the inside like a second skin. She scraped it clean, polished the iron, scrubbed the counters, washed every dish, and reorganized the shelves. She found herself humming as she worked, old tunes from Philadelphia, street songs she used to hear through open windows while she graded school lessons. By noon, the whole house was filled with the smell of rising bread. Martha came in first, stopping in the doorway like she'd run into a physical wall of warmth and memory. "Bread," she whispered. "Mama used to make bread before she passed." Cora wiped her hands on her apron. Couldn't have hungry children running around the mountains. Martha's eyes shimmered, but she blinked quickly and offered to set the table. A small gesture, but it cracked something open. An acknowledgement that this house could hold softness again. The next project was the hearth room, where the children slept and played. Toys were scattered everywhere, blankets in tangles, boots left wherever they'd fallen. Cora enlisted the twins. Samuel Jr. groaned. "Cleaning? Why us?" "Because," Cora said, pushing a broom into his hand, "you two have more energy than a pair of mountain goats. And goats are good at moving things where they belong." Sarah burst out laughing before her brother could protest. "Fine, Mama Cora, but we're negotiating payment." "Payment? Cookies," Sarah declared. The cinnamon ones. Cora pressed a hand dramatically to her chest. You drive a hard bargain, Miss Sarah. Very well. Cookies. They cleaned. They argued. They made a mess trying to fix the mess. And somehow, by the end, the hearth room looked like a place where childhood lived rather than where sorrow slept. It wasn't perfection, but it was life. Joshua needed something different. The boy was sharp enough to understand loss, but too young to know how to carry it. Grief sat on him like oversized boots, awkward, heavy, everywhere. One afternoon, she found him sitting alone behind the barn, throwing rocks at a fence post with furious little grunts. Hard day? Cora asked, folding down beside him. He shrugged without looking at her. I miss Papa, he whispered, and Mama, and I don't know where to put it. That was when Cora realized children hurt loudly, adults hurt quietly, and she had asked him to do both. Come with me, she said. She led him to the tiny hill where Samuel and Margaret Thornton were buried. The markers were simple, hand-carved, weathered by winter. Cora knelt in the grass and set a hand on the smaller grave. Joshua hovered, afraid to get closer. Talk to her, Cora said softly. Tell her what hurts. She'll listen. Joshua's chin trembled. I don't want her to know I'm mad. Being mad means you loved someone so much, the world feels wrong without them, she said. That's not shame. That's your heart talking. Joshua knelt and whispered, voice shaking, Mama, I'm trying. Please don't be disappointed. Cora let him cry until his small body went heavy with release. When they walked back to the house, the boy slipped his hand into hers, quietly, without asking, as though it had been waiting for the right moment. Rebecca, at 7, needed confidence. She was timid, afraid to ask for anything, afraid of being a burden. Cora saw herself in that child. Cora at 7, at 17, at 29, apologizing for taking up space in rooms not built for girls like her. One evening, while patching Rebecca's dress, Cora gently offered the needle to her. Want to learn? Rebecca flinched. I'll ruin it. Then we ruin it together, Cora said warmly. Rebecca learned, slowly, badly, determinedly. And when she mastered a hymn for the first time, the pride in her eyes shone like firelight. Little Margaret was the easiest. She climbed into Cora's lap every chance she got, chattered endlessly about everything from clouds to chickens, and fell asleep draped over Cora like a warm, trusting blanket. The child's simple, instinctive affection soothed places in Cora she hadn't realized were wounded. And then there was Daniel, the sharp-eyed boy who'd silently appointed himself the judge of her reliability. He trailed her whenever she went outside, watching how she fed the chickens, chopped vegetables, hauled water, testing her, measuring her. One day, he surprised her. You can stay, he said gruffly, kicking at the dirt. I decided. Cora raised an eyebrow. Oh? And when did the council convene about this decision? Daniel's ears turned red. I just mean, you're doing good. The little ones ain't crying as much. Martha's sleeping better. Food tastes better. You fixed the roof. You even made Sarah stop stealing my socks. So, yeah, you can stay. Cora smiled. Big, warm, the kind people always told her looked too wide for her face. Thank you, Daniel. That means more than you know. He shrugged, embarrassed. I didn't say we like you. Just that you can stay. I understand, she said. But Daniel didn't see the way Martha grinned behind him, or the softening in Joshua's eyes, or the twins' smothering giggles. The walls of the home thickened with warmth, with routine, with structure returning. Morning lessons around the big table. Chores split among all 8 of them. Dinner eaten together, laughter rising more often than tears. Some evenings, after the children were asleep, Cora found herself sitting alone on the porch, the mountains stretching out like dark, watchful giants. She would think about Samuel, his last moments, the trembling scrawl of his handwriting, the enormous request he had placed in her hands. Cora didn't know if she was enough. She didn't know if any woman could be. But when she walked into the house each night and saw 7 children sleeping peacefully, knowing they were fed, washed, warm, and loved, she felt an unexpected truth settle deep in her chest like a steady flame. She was becoming their mother, not by blood, not by law, but by choice repeated every morning and every night. And the homestead, Samuel's home, was becoming hers. Winter crept down from the high peaks sooner than anyone expected. Frost clung to the windows each morning. The cattle's breath steamed like ghosts in the early light. The children's laughter carried thin on the cold air as they raced through chores before the snow set in deeply. Life inside the Thornton homestead was steadier than it had been in years. But stability draws attention, and Timber Ridge had begun to notice. It started with whispers. The new Thornton woman is too big for mountain work. She's unmarried, improper, a spinster raising 7 children that aren't hers. Must be after the land. Samuel's widow wasn't even cold before she arrived. Cora heard every word. Whispers turned loud enough to reach her ears when she brought the children into town for supplies. The married women clucked their tongues. The storekeeper's wife refused to look her directly in the eye. And Mrs. Henshaw, the town's self-appointed moral guardian, treated her as if she were tracking filth across polished church floors. But gossip wasn't the only thing stirring. One evening, after the children had settled into their studies by lamplight, Cora stepped onto the porch to fetch firewood and saw a shadowed figure disappearing into the tree line. A horse snorted softly. Hoofprints led away from the homestead, fresh in the frost. Someone had been watching. Cora's breath caught. She was not a woman prone to fear. Years of being mocked and underestimated had taught her endurance. But this was different. This wasn't ridicule whispered from behind lace fans. This was someone studying the house, studying her. She waited until the children were in bed before mentioning it to Martha. "Have you seen anyone near the property?" she asked, keeping her voice steady. Martha paused, worry flickering across her face. "I thought I saw a rider 2 days ago on the ridge. Didn't think nothing of it. They didn't come close. And you didn't tell me?" Martha's shoulders hunched. "I didn't want to scare the little ones." Cora softened, touching the girl's arm. "You're not alone anymore, Martha. You don't carry the fear alone either." The next morning, Edgar Morrison rode down with news. "Got something you ought to hear, Miss Ashford," he said grimly. "Town council met last night." Cora stiffened. "About the children?" "They're calling it a concern for propriety," Edgar said, spitting into the dirt, "claiming a single unmarried woman living with 7 young'uns ain't right. That maybe the homestead ought to be overseen by a man, someone appointed by the town." A cold, familiar shame coiled inside her belly, the same shame she'd carried in Philadelphia when the school board forced her to resign because parents didn't want a fat spinster teaching their children. "A man?" she repeated quietly. "To oversee me?" Edgar nodded. "And that ain't all. Word spread that Samuel left the land to you. Men don't like a woman holding 300 acres on her own, especially not one from the east who don't know her place." Cora felt the anger rise like heat beneath ice. "I know my place. It is here, in this home, with these children." Edgar sighed. "I know, but some folks in Timber Ridge don't agree. They think a woman without a husband ain't fit to run land, money, or children." Cora steadied herself against the porch post. "My weight," she said softly. The words pulled from deep inside has always given people an excuse to call me incapable. They look at me and see what they want to see, not who I am. Edgar's voice was rough. The children see who you are. That's what matters. But the town didn't matter today. What mattered was the rider and the whispers and the growing sense that someone wanted this homestead, a widow's land, a dead man's children, and the large, inconvenient woman who stood in the way. Cora began noticing small things. A latch she was certain she had closed now open. Tracks outside the barn where none should be. A window cracked that no child admitted to breaking. She set her jaw and pushed forward. Winter demanded labor that didn't pause for fear. She and the children preserved vegetables, smoked meat, repaired tools. Snow fell heavier every day. By December, the pass to town would be impassable. One evening, as Cora sat by the fire mending shirts, Daniel approached her quietly. "Miss Cora?" he asked. "You know Papa kept a journal, right?" Her needle froze in midair. "No, I didn't." Daniel glanced around, making sure the younger children were occupied. He pulled a small leather-bound book from beneath a loose floorboard by the hearth. "Papa wrote things when Mama died," he said, "and then again after he started writing to you. I didn't know if I should show you." Cora opened the book with reverent care. Samuel's handwriting was rough but steady. The first entries were grief-stricken, raw sorrow from a man who'd lost his wife in childbirth. But then, months later, she found a line that made her breath catch. September 1885, wrote to Miss Ashford again. She ain't afraid of the truth. Her letters feel like a lantern against the dark. Kids need someone like her. Truth is, so do I. Her eyes blurred as she read on. If I die before she comes, God let her stay. Let her see this place as home. Let her love the children so they ain't alone in this world. Cora pressed a hand to her mouth, her heart heavy with the ache of something beautiful and broken. Daniel watched her carefully. "Miss Cora, Papa already knew you before he died. He trusted you. We all do." Thunder cracked outside, though the sky was clear. Heavy boots approached the porch, footsteps that did not belong to Edgar or any neighbor. Cora stood. Daniel's eyes went wide. "Someone's here," he whispered. The knock on the door wasn't a knock. It was a demand. "Territorial Authority," a voice barked. "Miss Cordelia Ashford, we're here to discuss guardianship of the Thornton children. Open up." Cora felt the world tilt again, not with grief this time, but with battle. The children gathered behind her, frightened. Martha clutched little Margaret close. Daniel stepped in front of the twins. Joshua grabbed her skirt with trembling fingers. Cora squared her shoulders. "I'm here," she said quietly, "and I'm not giving you my children." This time, she wasn't afraid of her voice shaking. She was afraid of losing the family she had crossed a continent to find. Snow drifted in lazy spirals outside the windows, but the air inside the Thornton homestead had gone sharp and tight as a drawn bowstring. The knock came again, harder this time, rattling the hinges, vibrating through the floorboards. "Territorial Authority," the voice shouted. "Miss Ashford, open this door or we'll open it ourselves." The children huddled behind Cora, 7 anxious breaths sinking into one trembling rhythm. Cora's heart hammered so violently she felt it in her fingertips, but fear was not new to her. Fear had been a shadow following her since Philadelphia. But this was different. This time she had something worth fighting for. Daniel moved to stand at her side, jaw set. Martha clutched Margaret tighter. Even the twins had fallen silent, wide-eyed. Cora placed herself fully in front of them all, positioning her body like a wall between danger and the children Samuel had begged her to protect. She opened the door just enough to face the men outside. 3 of them. One wore a stiff bowler hat and carried a leather binder. Mr. Blackwell, the territorial officer who'd first questioned her right to the children. The other 2 were deputies, thick-coated, armed, eyes hard. "Miss Ashford," Blackwell said, removing his hat with a semblance of politeness. "The council has expressed grave concern for the welfare and propriety of these children. You lack legal standing as their guardian. We are here to escort them to temporary placement in town until a proper arrangement can be determined." "No." Cora didn't hesitate. She didn't breathe. She didn't blink. "You are not taking these children." One deputy stepped forward. "Ma'am, don't make this difficult." "Difficult?" Her voice dropped to a low, shaking, dangerous calm. "You come onto a man's property, threaten to tear apart a grieving family, stand on the porch he built with his own hands, and you dare call me difficult?" Blackwell sighed wearily. "Miss Ashford, your feelings—" "This is not about feelings." Cora stepped out onto the porch, closing the door behind her so the little ones would hear less. "This is about a father's dying request. These children have food, warmth, schooling, chores, a routine, stability, everything a child needs, and more love than they have had since their parents died. You want to take that, not because of their welfare, but because I'm an unmarried woman, a fat woman, a woman you think can't possibly manage a homestead." Blackwell reddened. "Your size is not the issue." "Liar," she said softly. The word hung in the cold air like smoke from a gun barrel. The deputies shifted uneasily. "These children have been thriving under my care," Cora continued. "Their reading has improved. Their health has improved. Their grief has eased. And unless you intend to drag me off this porch in irons and pry those children from my dead hands, they are not leaving this home." Blackwell stiffened. "Miss Ashford, I have the authority." "Not here, you don't." All 3 men whirled as Edgar Morrison rode up on horseback, his old rifle slung across his saddle, frost in his beard. "This is Thornton land," Edgar said, swinging down, "and Samuel's will is clear enough for anyone who ain't blind. This homestead and these children were entrusted to Cora Ashford. You try to take 'em, you'll answer to me, and to every neighbor within 20 miles who knew Samuel and loved those young'uns." Blackwell's jaw dropped. "Mr. Morrison, this is official business." "Then officially turn yourself around," Edgar growled, "unless you want to start a territorial war with half the mountain folk." The deputies exchanged a look. They might have taken a frightened school teacher, but Edgar Morrison was another matter entirely. He had 50 winters on these mountains and a reputation for ending fights before they started. Blackwell straightened his binder as though dust had suddenly gathered on it. "Very well, Miss Ashford. We will reconvene after reviewing the documents. For now. Even he heard the threat buried inside her calm. The men mounted their horses. Snow kicked up beneath hooves. In moments, they were gone, retreating down the road toward Timber Ridge. Cora released a long breath. Her hands shook. Her knees weakened. She pressed a palm against the doorframe to steady herself. Edgar looked at her, something close to admiration softening his weathered face. "You stood firm, Miss Ashford. Samuel would be proud." "Would he?" Her voice cracked. Edgar nodded. "You didn't bend. You didn't break. That's the only way these mountains respect a soul." Cora opened the door. 7 children waited inside, silent, terrified, hopeful. Martha was the first to speak. "Mama, are they gone?" Cora gathered all of them into her arms. "Yes, sweetheart. They're gone, and you're safe, all of you, for now." But as she held them, feeling their trembling bodies against hers, she knew this fight wasn't finished. It was only beginning. The mountains went unnervingly still after the confrontation. Snow softened the world into silence, but beneath that silence, Cora felt something coiled and waiting. The territorial authorities hadn't retreated. They had regrouped. Inside the Thornton cabin, however, life forced itself onward. Rebecca practiced her stitching. Joshua chopped kindling with fierce determination. Martha helped Cora prepare supper, her hand steady now. The twins chased each other through the yard, laughter returning in small bursts. Little Margaret clung to Cora's apron, humming as she shadowed her every step. But even with the fire burning warm and the stew simmering on the stove, fear crept into their eyes whenever horse hooves sounded in the distance or the wind hit the door just wrong. That night, once the children were asleep in their shared loft, Cora sat alone at the table, the fire casting gold onto her worn hands. She was so tired, bone-tired, yet her heart was louder than her exhaustion. Footsteps approached behind her. Daniel stood there, awkward and lanky, his shoulders broader now after months of winter chores. "Can't sleep?" Cora asked softly. He shook his head. "You're not safe," Daniel said, voice low. "They'll come back. Men like Blackwell don't like being told no, especially not by a woman." Cora folded her hands. "I know." Daniel hesitated, then sat across from her, elbows on the table like an adult preparing for a serious talk. "Papa used to say the mountains test people. Some fail, some survive, some belong." He glanced at her, eyes intense. "You belong, but they're still going to test you." Cora swallowed. "And what do you think I should do?" Daniel looked toward the children's sleeping loft. "They need you. Martha needs you. I need you. So you can't leave, even if it gets bad, even if it gets dangerous." The words hit harder than any accusation Timber Ridge had thrown at her. This wasn't duty or expectation. This was a child choosing her. Daniel wasn't finished. "Papa wrote in his journal that you'd be strong enough to stay, even if he wasn't here." I didn't understand what he meant until now. He wasn't just picking a wife. He was picking a mother for us. Cora covered her mouth, emotion rising like a tide. Daniel leaned forward, voice steady as a grown man's. "Miss Cora, Mama Cora, if the law comes again, we'll stand with you, all of us. You won't fight alone." She reached across the table, taking his hand, calloused, warm, trembling despite his steady tone. "Daniel," she whispered, "I crossed 1,000 miles because your father asked me to. But I'm staying because of you, all of you. I'm not leaving this home, not for the law, not for the town, not for anything." A long moment passed between them, the quiet settling, the fire popping softly. Daniel exhaled, shoulders loosening. "We can face them," he murmured. "Together." Cora squeezed his hand. "Together." Outside, the wind howled, testing the walls. But inside the cabin, the promise between them held strong. 7 children, 1 woman who refused to break, and a mountain homestead that had become a family by firelight in the quiet after the storm. When the wind softens and the fire settles low, stories like Cora's linger. They remind us that family is sometimes chosen, that love can grow from duty, and that the strongest bonds are forged in the moments we don't think we can survive, yet do. Thank you for walking with her into the mountains, for standing beside her at that door, for listening as she became a mother by choice, not birth. Before you go, tell me, where in the world are you listening from tonight? If you still believe in unexpected love, stay close. The next story is already on its way.